Hey there, welcome back. So here's where we left off last time. We have our grid, which is able to generate, and when it generates, it doesn't already make a match. So what we're going to do today is we're going to finish what we started last time, which is making our touch to move system, where when we touch and drag, we're able to swap any two pieces. Well, not any two pieces, a piece with a piece that is bordering it. You can see right now when I touch, it tells me what the column and row is that I'm on. So let's dive right in. First thing we're going to do is open up the grid script. So let's go ahead and get that nice and open here. Now we're going to be making a few specific helper methods again today. The first one is we want to be able to know if there is or if any one specific column and row is inside the grid. And the reason we want that, if I jump back into looking at the game here, I'll show you why it's important. If I click somewhere off the grid, I get 5, -2, or 0, -2, or 112. If I'm clicking somewhere that isn't in our field of play, I don't want it to register as me actually trying to control. I don't want to, just randomly tap here and have it think I'm trying to access a piece that's at position 710, because 710 doesn't exist in our grid, and we'll get all kinds of exceptions from that. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a little helper method to tell whether or not any one specific column/row is inside of the grid. So let's dive into that first here. I'm just going to kind of make sure that I have stuff pretty much where I want it here before I do anything else. So I've got my 2D array, spawn pieces, match at, grid to pixel, pixel to grid. So I'm going to make that little helper method to check to see if something's inside the grid. I'm just going to put it right here in between pixel to grid and touch input. So we're going to call this function, let's go simple and say is in grid. And this is going to require a column and a row as arguments. So what I want to do is I want to check to make sure that the column is greater than or equal to 0 and less than the width. So we'll say if column is greater than or equal to 0 and column is less than the width. And then I also want to make sure that the row, so if row is greater than or equal to 0 and row is less than the height, then I'm going to return true because it's inside the grid. If if any one of these conditions isn't met, so like if the column is less than 0 or greater than the width, or greater than or equal to the width, the row is less than 0 or greater than or equal to the height, then I'm going to return false. And I can get rid of this little pass statement there. So essentially all I'm doing is just making sure that we're inside the grid so that for my touch input, I don't go any further if that touch is not inside the grid, if that makes any sense. So in here, in my touch input, I'm going to say if input is action pressed, UI touched, first touch is equal to all of this. Now, oh yeah, and then we change it to a grid position. So what I want to do is I want to actually only assign first touch if that grid position is inside the grid. So what I'm going to do here is change the way I have this set up just a little bit. Okay, sorry about that weird cut. So first, let me get rid of this little print statement that I don't need. And I'm going to say if grid position, actually, let's not do it that way. Let's do it if is in grid. And what I want to check is grid position dot x and grid position dot y, which is our column and our row. Then I'm going to print, just say like OK. And if it's not, so else print not OK. Not super creative there, but should be fine. So let me save my scene here really quickly. Let's minimize this so that we can actually see our output, and let's hit play. So if I click outside, I get not okay, not okay, not okay, not okay, not okay, not okay, and if I click inside, I get okay. Alright, nice. So that's working pretty well. Now what I want to do next is I want to create a kind of a switch that's telling me whether or not I'm trying to control the grid. So up here in my variables, I'm going to create another one, and I have my touch variables here, so I'm going to make this with those, and my variable I'm going to create here is going to be controlling, and this is going to be a switch that turns on if we're trying to control a piece and then flips off after a piece has been controlled, so that we are only going to do certain logic if we're actually trying to control a piece. So I'm going to set controlling equal to false. So then down here in my touch input again, if the grid position X and Y are inside the grid, I'm not going to print OK anymore. Instead, I'm going to say controlling is equal to true. And I can just get rid of this else statement because I don't need that. Now, when we release the UI touch, I'm going to say final touch is equal to the global mouse position. And then I'm going to say var grid position is equal to pixel to grid first touch dot x, or actually not first touch, sorry, final touch dot x, final touch dot y. So it's the same logic I was doing up here. I'm converting this coordinate system into a grid position. Now the grid position is all of this. And then I'm going to say if is in grid, and I want to check grid position dot x and grid position dot y. So if that's true, and they were already controlling, so and controlling, then I'm going to say like print swipe. And so the reason I'm doing it this way, I'll show you here right now. Let's go out of distraction free mode. Let's hit play. Alright, so I want to make sure that if I click outside of the grid and then swipe in and let go, it doesn't think I'm trying to swap any two pieces. Or if I click on a piece and swipe out of the grid and let go, it doesn't think I want to control. But if I click and drag or swipe with my finger inside the grid for both of those positions, then it thinks I want to control. So I'm creating like a hotspot here, where if I click and drag anywhere that isn't in the grid, or go from outside of the grid, I must be rounding that, go from outside of the grid to inside the grid, or vice versa, it doesn't think I want to control. So that's what I'm creating here, is I'm turning this grid into a hotspot. Alright, now let's move this a little bit forward here. Let's take a look back at our grid script here. And now I'm going to create a couple more helper methods. So the first helper method I want to create is one that's able to swap two pieces. So I'm going to create that, and I'm going to have this be just underneath touch input here. So I'm going to call this function swap pieces. And this is going to take two arguments. I need to know which piece I want to swap, so I'm just going to call that piece. And I also need to know a direction in which I want to swap it. So up, down, left, or right. And then everything else can be taken from there. So I can find the piece that's up, down, left, or right, and then swap the two. So I'm just going to call it direction. I'm going to use a vector 2 for that. So, alright. What I want to do first is I want to find out, sorry about that weird cut there. So actually, rather than having the piece come in, I want to be able to find the piece I want to swap in our all pieces array. So I'm going to change this to instead be the location of the piece in that array. And I'm going to find that by using the column and the row. So column, comma, row, comma, direction. Those are my three arguments. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to declare a variable to hold that first piece. So I'm going to do var first piece is equal to all pieces, column and row. So I'm assigning this to be whichever piece it is inside of the array. Then I'm going to assign the other piece. So I'm going to say var other piece is equal to all pieces, column, and now I want to add to the column the x part of the direction. So plus direction.x, and then row plus the y part of the direction plus direction.y. So I've assigned those two pieces. Now, essentially what I'm going to do, since I have both of them held in memory, is swap them and then swap their positions. So I really only want to worry about the positions at the end. My main focus is having the logic in the board be right. So I'm going to say all pieces, column, row, is equal to other piece. So I'm moving the other piece to where the first piece was, and all pieces, column plus direction.x, row plus direction.y is equal to first piece. So I'm changing where they are in the grid, and now I have to change where they are actually physically. So next I'm going to say first piece dot position is equal to, and the position I want to give it is its new column and row, and its new column and row is going to be vector 2. I don't want to do vector 2 because I want to change it from grid to pixel. So I'm going to say grid to pixel, and the grid to pixel I'm going to change is column plus direction.x and row plus direction.y, and then something similar to the other piece. So other piece dot position is equal to grid to pixel, and this is just going to be column and row because I'm switching those two pieces. Okay, cool. So I'm physically moving them. Now I just have one more helper method that I have to check into here. Okay, sorry for that weird cut. So we're going to make another little helper function here, and this helper function is going to decide which piece needs to move and in which direction it should move. So I'm going to call this function, and I'm going to call it touch difference. And this is going to take two arguments. It's going to take an argument for the first grid position, so we'll call this grid 1. So the first grid position of the first touch, and the grid position of the release of when they let go of the screen, so grid 2. Oops, there we go. Now what I want to do very first is declare a variable that's the difference between these two. So I'm going to call this variable difference, and this is going to be equal to grid 2 minus grid 1. So first thing I'm going to do is subtract those two. Then I want to know, is the x difference bigger or is the y difference bigger? And by bigger, I mean the magnitude of the number, the unsigned version of the number. Because you could have an x difference of like, I don't know, -4 and a y difference of 1, and that, if we're not doing the sign or the magnitude of the number, it would register the y difference as being larger. So I want to say if difference dot, actually absolute value, I just said that, so absolute value of difference dot x is greater than absolute value of difference dot y. So if the x difference is bigger than the y difference, then I need to see if I should move left or right. So I'm going to say if difference dot x is greater than 0, so So that means that the difference is greater than 0, so the difference is positive, so we need to move to the right. Then I'm going to swap pieces, and the pieces I want to swap are going to be grid1.x, grid1.y, and then the direction is going to be to the right. So vector 2, 1, 0. Okay, so that's if x is greater than 0. Now I could put an else in here, but if the x value is 0, I don't want to actually swap them. So I'm going to say else if difference.x is less than 0, then I'm going to do this whole swap pieces thing. I'm going to copy that and paste it down here. Only instead of going 1, 0, it's going to be negative 1, 0. Now all of this is inside of this first if block, which is if the difference on x is bigger than the difference on y. Now if that's not true, so I'm going to do else if absolute value difference.y is greater than absolute value of difference.x. So if they're equal, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to say if difference.y is greater than 0, then I'm going to paste that line again, only this time I'm going to swap pieces up. So it's going to be 0, 1. And then I'm going to check else if difference.y is less than 0. Again, I'm going to paste that there, and this time I'm going to go 0, negative 1. Okay, cool. So now I need to call touch difference, which is going to call swap pieces. And I'm going to call touch difference from touch input. So if where we're doing our swipe here, I'm instead going to, sorry, lost train of thought there. I'm instead going to have it call my actual touch difference. So I'm going to say touch difference, and the two things I want to use are the grid position of the first touch and the grid position of the second touch. So I'm going to use pixel 2 grid first touch.x, first touch.y. Okay, so this actually needs to be just first touch then. My mistake. So, because I want to just send it in as a vector. So first touch. And then I want to also send in, now I could do the same thing for final touch, but I already stored that as a temporary variable here. So grid position. Okay, cool. Let's save this and let's see what mistakes I made. So let's go out of distraction-free mode so we can see the output. Oh, okay, cool. So identifier not found, direction. So where's my error with that? Did I misspell it? D-I-R-E-C-T-I-O-N. D-I-R-E-C-T-I-O-N. No? Oh no, I did misspell it. D-I-R-E-C, there we go. T-I. Alright. You don't have to spell correctly, but you do have to spell consistently. Okay, grid 1. So what did I do there? Oh, I didn't use an underscore. Good lord. Did I do that again here anywhere? Not that I see. Okay. So out of distraction mode, let's hit play, and haha. Okay. Nope, I did have to do it the way I was doing it before. Good lord. This is filled with errors. So for my touch difference, I can't just do first touch because my pixel to grid requires 2 arguments. So this needs to be first touch.x and first touch.y. And then I'm gonna just put this on the next line just to make it a little more readable. Okay, cool. Now let's try this. Alright, cool. So I'm able to swap these pieces. There's no, like, this isn't very interesting though, and you can just keep swapping, it doesn't detect matches. But if I try to swipe off the grid, it doesn't break anything, which is good. And if I try to swipe in from the grid, it does break something. We'll fix that really soon. But there's also no like juice to this. This isn't fun to do. So we will fix that very, very soon. All right. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask them in the comments down below. This was a little bit longer than I like my videos to be. You can follow me on Twitter, find out when I post a new video. You can join my Discord where I'm chatting pretty much every day. Otherwise, have yourselves a wonderful day.